So we're looking at achieving operational excellence. And so my first question will be, how do you define operational excellence? What constitutes it? And John, what do you see as operational excellence?
I think operational excellence is the core, is the start. When people talk about technology, talk about IT, the first thing to talk about is my system up. That's the ticket to the game, and this is not new to anyone, to be fair. It's understanding, working with the business, what is that? I think the core to operational excellence as a technology organization is actually understanding the business you're trying to serve. What is this? What is those levels you need to put in? It sounds like a terribly obvious statement, but what are you trying to solve too? We can have a wonderful discussion talking to ourselves in technology in what do we need to do, but is the business on that page? I've defined something called, and it's just a Johnism, by the way, it's nothing that lives in the industry like this, it's the golden circle of retail, being in retail, being at Woolworths. And what are those things we need to do of moving a product from a supplier to a distribution center, to a store, hopefully the customer buys it, and how do we get it back there? And what are all the forecasting capabilities, replenishment capabilities there? And defining that and understanding those metrics, those service level metrics, starting over there is absolute key. From a tech perspective then, how do we translate that into the right technologies as we go forward? What do we need to do? And looking at Patrick sitting as my team over here, there's things you can do technology-wise. Let's engage the business. I want a split-second recovery. Well, quite frankly, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. You can't do it. How do you engage with them? What do you agree with them? What are the trade-offs? I know you interrupt me. So
no, I'm going to interrupt because I want to bring Mimo in because you're going to tell us all of it.
I'll go off on a tangent on that.
And I really want to do that. And there's some things you said I want to delve into, but I want to give Mimo a bit of an opportunity here to say her points. Because Mimo, you said to me, that's the ground zero, is this sort of stuff. And you identified to me 4 attributes that you saw as integral in operational excellence. And they were reliability, accessibility, availability, and security for them. But you were saying that you've got to recognize that is just the starting point, really. You've got to go beyond, you've got to know you're delivering that and then take it to the next step.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That is ground zero and that is your base. And I think to what John was saying, ensuring that your core services are running 24/7 is absolutely critical. That is giving you a ticket to the game, really, a seat at the table in order to play in other areas of technology. I mean, imagine watching a live game being streamed and that goes down in the middle of the game when someone's scoring a goal. That customer experience and trust is lost. So absolutely, that is your foundation. That is a must. But the other side for me is also about how do you then shift that even further? You've done all of this and things are stable and running. How do you align your technology objectives to the business objectives by also understanding what your business is and your technologists understanding that, and to really work together to drive out more value out of technology through whether it's change, whether building new products, whether innovating, whatever it might be, but then how do you drive that value, but then how do you demonstrate that ROI on technology also at the same time? So all of those to me define operational.
I want to come into how you track that sort of stuff and the difference between your intuition and the objectivity of data to guide your decision making. But I wanted to get into a challenge that I see for you, John, in an environment like Woolworths, a highly transactional environment, 1,100 stores across Australia. Anyone who's been in a supermarket on a weekend doing their shopping knows how the volume of transactions that you're dealing with. How do you elevate your thinking above the parapet of what's going on day to day to be able to guide the business forward? Because what I'm hearing from Mimo, it's not just being operationally excellent, great, but if you really want to develop your role, you've got to be doing more beyond that.
Well, I think operational excellence has many dimensions. The one is keeping the lights on and running. The other one is how do you create the capabilities to make the business operationally excellent?
Yeah.
Different nuance to that. So a good example I use often is just our data. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I decided we've got to get our data in one place. We've done that. Everything's on the Google platform. And just getting that ahead of the time, creating that platform for the business and making sure it's working day in, day out, and then empowering to because if you asked me 5 years ago, would I have said Gen AI is around the corner, over the corner? I'm not Nostradamus, I wouldn't have been that.
Yeah.
But I think just the operation, does all the mechanics actually work? Do they actually work, and how do you get ahead of them? How do you create the right platforms? How do you create the right cloud platforms, the right API platforms? So what are the things you're thinking ahead, what is happening? I mean, technology, I've been in technology a long time, and I think the last 5 years has probably changed more than the last 25 years, to be honest with you. Just in terms of the art of the possible, in terms of the compute power, in terms of network speed, in terms of AI, in terms of data, in terms of real time and so on, and computer vision is a big one in our world. So how are you standing back and looking at these things, and how do we make sure we stitch them together, not for 1 second compromising the ability to operate, and create that platform for the business to take things to another level from their perspective in driving operational excellence?
Yeah, and I want to come into I'll come back to that point of the engagement with the business and do that. But I want to just first go to Memo on the metrics of what you're tracking it. And you referred me to the DORA metrics that you sort of track to give you guidance on that. Can you share your thinking on that?
So metrics and tracking for me is all about continuous improvement. It's not really a metric that you're using as a yardstick to make people do things differently. So, you know, there's many metrics that you use, whether it's in terms of velocity and how you're actually mean time to change and how often you're releasing change, to how often you're getting priority 1, priority 2 incidents and what they're associated with. Are they due to change management or whatever they're associated with? So having those metrics in place in a dashboard is really a great indicator, and you're using data to really tell you where things are working really well, where you need to tweak some things and where you need to optimize. And it's all really about bringing that together and really saying, well, this is an area, it's not just about fixing a problem when it occurs. It's about really having the controls and the processes in place in the background to indicate and monitor and tell you where there's something potentially that's going to become an issue that you fix before it does become an issue. So it's all about how you're managing that environment in the background.
But it's also important, though, if we look at Gen AI, people are sort of saying you need a human eye over the output that's being created. And there is a fine balance between being over-reliant on data and not having that intuition with what's happening, that people issue with what's a priority or what's an issue at a particular time. How do you finesse that balance?
Oh, look, it's a fine balance, but I think it's experience and over time knowing, you know, where you've got certain things bubbling up in the data that you think, yeah, well, that's going to cause an issue here. It's a balance of the two things, really, but I think you can't go on intuition alone. You really need to get the stats and the numbers and the information to show you what is actually happening behind the scenes.
It's almost cross-referencing your own intuition with some other sort of data.
Totally.
John, your point there about you've never seen so much change over the last 5 years. And really that alludes to how much more critical operational excellence is in this time, because we're even more reliant on IT. It's that engagement, though, I'm interested with stakeholders. And I've heard both of you use that term trust. John, you said 30-year career. You've earned that trust over 30 years with people. Tell us how you use that trust. And then I'd also be interested in your advice to people walking into environments that have had a poor track record with IT, where IT has been a scapegoat for people. How could they change perspectives in those sorts of organizations? So that sort of stuff.
I think the first one, the whole analogy of technology and business, I actually don't like the narrative, to be honest with you.
Great.
Technology people are the business. We just happen to operate the technology function. The buying team operate the buying function. Now, I know this being maybe a bit silly, but that's what it is. And I think the key in all of this stuff is understand your business. Understand your business even more than the business understands. And I'm not trying to be silly about that, but understand the art of the possible. So I've been in retail a long time. So when I go to things like NRF in New York, which is the National Retail Federation, big show, with all this technology at play, I mean, you can get sucked into the vanity of technology as opposed to the sanity of it. How do you understand what it can actually do for you? How can you see the problems? It doesn't mean it's a definitive, but see enough over there to bring it back to the right stakeholders, if they're not already with you in New York anyway, to talk about it. What can I do? What can I solve here? A simple example is using computer vision with cameras on shelves to look at to look at what's on the shelf. It's a problem being in retail forever, to be honest with you. What is on the shelf? What does my ERP say is on the shelf? Are they the same? And if they're the same, typically you replenish them properly. If they're not the same, you've got a problem. Typically in grocery, you struggle with it. So it's a simple example of evolving technology. That's a problem to solve. Get the business involved, and how do we bring it together and solve that?
Well, John, at the end, I'm going to come to the golden rules that you've learned in the career. But
Sure.
At that point, you just said that avoid being sucked in by the vanity. Keep remind on the sanity. I'd like to elaborate a bit on that because I think that's golden advice. Okay. Memo, your thoughts about how you engage with the business and how you get that trust with people?
I think the very first thing is really having a deep understanding of the business. And I usually call it really being in tune with the heartbeat of the business, to understand why certain things are urgent or important, and really understanding the impact of technology to your end customer through the business and why that's so important. And I think that's the starting point. If you don't understand the business intimately, I think you kind of lose a level of trust and you don't end up building really good technology solutions and outcomes. So I think that is a critical point. It's another one of my ground zero kind of foundational things. You've really got to understand the context in which you're building technology and supporting technology in.
But Memo, in the hurly-burly of modern business work, you've got to do trade-offs. You can't please everyone all the time. How do you prioritize then what demands your time and resources at a particular point?
So I'll probably use two particular lenses on that. One, I tend to use a risk-based lens, and that is really identifying and aligning your portfolio based on the types of risks that you need to address quite quickly, whether it's a compliance, regulatory, whether it's a technology risk, whether it's a vulnerability or whatever it might be. Whether it's maintaining the currency of your technology stack and whether it's upgrades, and all of those types of things. So that's one area. The foundational IT components have to be a priority in that and balancing that. And then the other side of that spectrum or pendulum is around the growth initiatives, those that are aligned to business growth objectives, whether it's customer experience, whether it's new product, whether it's innovation. And it's really then balancing the two together and really being able and being very transparent and working with the business to do that. So you're not doing this in isolation and going to the business saying, hey, these are my priorities. You're actually sitting there together collectively because you own this. This is all a business risk at the end of the day. You are part of the business. You're not a separate organisation on the side, working together to really outline and manage that. And that's when the real strategic discussions start to play, and you can start to trade off what's more value, the cost of something, as opposed to the value it's driving, as opposed to another initiative, and be able to have that conversation on, well, actually, as an organisation, this is going to be more valuable for us, and it's managing A, B, and C, and we're going to go with that. And so you're making that decision in that way.
John, Memo used an interesting word there, transparency, in that prioritization process. I can only hazard a guess at the size of your IT budget in Woolworths, but how can you provide transparency to end users about what you're deciding on, what your priorities are?
I think the big thing with leaders is to educate them. I think as technologists, we tend to think the business understands. You might find some who do, but many actually got no idea what you're talking about. There are typically IT for IT things, and again, I think everyone knows this. There are IT for IT things. We need to educate. So why are you doing this cloud transformation? Why are you doing this data transformation? Why are you doing this network transformation? This just sounds like stuff in geekland, so to speak. But bringing it back to the business, bringing it back to what's it going to do for you. Some of the stuff I'm busy solving a problem right now, and some of the stuff I'm creating a platform which will take you to the next level at some other stage. And when you start doing those platforms, I mentioned earlier, things like computer vision and AI and automation, etc., that technology is built on those platforms, and that's where the engagement comes with the business. I mean, I tell my senior leaders, so what do you do? I'm in technology. They're not in technology. You're in retail. You just happen to own technology. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits, and so the biggest success, the reason for success is we've created the right relationships with the business leaders as well, who understand, educate them. They educate us as well. It's not one-way education. And that's where that magic actually happens. And that transparency is, this is what we're trying to do. And every now and then we'll do something that's, oh, good idea, but thanks for coming. And that's okay. You'll fail that's fine. It's not failure. It's actually, well, I thought that's going to do that. It doesn't do that. Call it and move on, to be honest with you.
And a piece of salient advice you gave me beforehand is you can never over-communicate. And I think that's intriguing in the sense that you're caught up with the intensity of your role, stepping out to sort of tell these leaders what's going on, to inform them. It requires mental effort to sort of separate yourself from the day-to-day to do that sort of leadership. I'm wondering how you do that.
Look, it's not something I do myself. I've got a great leadership team and leaders in the teams, etc. And ultimately, the way you organize is they've got the relationship. So, I've got a person who looks after all stores environments. So they create the deep relationship with the store's business, and that's where that magic happens. And I can talk that across the entire business. But they're talking business. They're talking what we're going to do. They're talking what's the customer experience. What can you do? And bringing that art of the possible from a tech perspective to this is what I want to improve today, and what is the art of the possible tomorrow. That's where the transparency, that's where education happens. So by the time you actually get to having a discussion, almost just becoming almost, in quotes, boring, because you've actually got to the conclusion, to be honest, because you've actually on the same page, you agree. But you've got to invest in the time. I mean, you can't sit as technology teams and have these 3 months of discussion, things the best thing since sliced bread, set up a half an hour with the CFO, give him a 12-page pack and say, do you agree? You just can't work like that. You need to take people on the journey. And that's what we've done. Are we perfect? No. That's what we do.
You're on the way there. John, one of the things we're talking about prioritization.
Yeah.
And I'm also interested in that point about the engagement with the stakeholders, about where you're discerning. But you said to me one of your foundational priorities is removing legacy tech debt in the organization, because you see that as the flexibility to move forward and not be hindered by the past.
Correct.
But there's a lot of technical implications in that tech thing. You know, you've got to be talking about the roles of APIs and, you know, where microservices architecture could play to give you flexibility. How do you finesse that sort of dialogue with people who are essentially retailers? They're laymen about technology.
Look, some of that dialogue, you need to make it state in English, to be honest with you. They don't care about APIs. They don't care about anything. Just, this is the function we're going to do. But talk about tech debt. I mean, I see Patrick sitting over there. 8 years ago, whatever the case is, we ran into an organization which had a significant amount of tech debt. And I give the board 10 out of 10. They realized we need to sort it out. So we sorted it out. Cost us a huge amount of money. But you can't sit back. And what we've done since then is called a life cycle management, etc. Be it applications, be it infrastructure, how do you keep it current? Yeah. So out of my CapEx every single year, there's a sizable chunk that says, out the box, we're spending that on keeping our technology current. Be it applications, be it infrastructure, be it whatever the case is. And that's what you do. And you build that trust. I don't even ask for the money anymore. They're just part of it. That's the money, and that's what we'll do.
And you said earlier on, I mean, that gave you the ability to pool all data into a single source, and that's given you the foundation for an AI world of today.
Well, I think technology's role is to lead, but lead with the business, but also come back to all the time to, you've got to understand the business. You've got to be the business. You've got to say, what do I want as the business? I've been in retail so a long time, so I put myself in the buyer role, I put myself in the store role, I put myself in the picker role, I put myself in the person picking off the shelves in the DC, etc. What do they need? What do they want? And what will make their life easier? Well, some of the jobs are bloody hard yards, to be honest with you. How can I use tech to make it even easier and easier as I go forward? And I think that's, again, then engaging with the owners, and it's just where that magic happens. I mean, it really is getting the right folk together from tech, from business, and having those discussions. And doesn't mean, and you might sometimes disagree quite viciously. That's okay. But it's bringing that discussion, have the discussion from an informed perspective. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah, and that was a point that you mentioned to me as well. You know, understanding the risk lens in, say, in banking environment, the compliance, ASIC, all that sort of, all those sort of compliance things that you've got to do. And that becomes the lens by which you can engage people.
Absolutely. And I think being very transparent about that and actually putting all of those initiatives in the bucket that you're actually prioritizing with the business and having the conversation and educating at the same time as to why it's important is the only way to go. Transparency and actually really having the conversation.
And you said something to me beforehand, Memo. Don't see the CIO function as being a vendor to the business. You know, it's a part. And I thought that was an interesting point, because some people see the service mindset, let's emulate a vendor and, put in the same sort of yardsticks that a vendor, we judge a vendor on, but you see it different.
I do actually. I see it, technology teams are co-drivers of that business. They're not order takers, they're not vendors. And in order to earn that seat at the table, you've got to have your foundational operational aspects in place, but you are a partner with the business and you're driving that business forward. So, and I think that's quite pivotal in terms of how you work together. And in order to really earn that too, you do really need to understand their business and you need to make it a priority to do so and put yourself in their shoes before you can actually get there.
Okay. Some talk about operating models, and John, you gave me a glorious quote. I'm sick to death of hearing about operating models. So I'd like to sort of...
I got to quote me on my quote.
But I wonder how you sort of complement the resources of your team, using vendors, and you get that arrangement in sync.
Yeah, I think just to qualify my comment, I think sometimes the operating model, as we're doing another operating model review, and that we need to do them, but an operating model is not a destination. An operating model is simply a framework to allow you to work. I think that's the key. And ultimately what makes a successful operating model is, again, having the right technology people engage with the right business people, or for that matter, the right technology people engage with their peers in technology correctly. And I think that's just what we're looking for all the time is, can the tech people speak to the tech people? How we organize them structurally correctly? How we organize the process properly? And I think it's always, always ready, never finish. Keep enhancing it. But it's not a silver bullet. It's something you need to look at all the time, and how do you keep improving it as you go forward.
And Memo, your point to me on the operating model, where the vendors play, is you don't want them to beat them up. You want actually to bring them into the tent, so to speak, to talk about what's going on. Can you share your thinking there?
Yeah, so the way I think about it is identifying those skill sets that you're strong at and you need as an organisation and you want to maintain internally. That's your IP and that's what you want to build. And really identify what other skill sets you need to be successful for your business also. And find the partner or vendor that really can augment that for you and bring them into the scope of things. But they're more augmenting your capability and driving forward and finding the right partners that help you with that, and vendors, and sharing your strategic direction with them. That's when you actually work together as a one team and you drive out really, really good outcomes for your business. So it's hard work to actually treat different, just like with the business internally, you are a partner, not a vendor. It's the same thing with your vendors and your external partners. They're part of that success and that outcome that you're trying to deliver to.
So you need to be able to confide with them, have confidence and trust them, that sort of stuff.
You wouldn't trust them, if you don't trust them, why have you got them touching your systems and building technology? So it's the same thing. So yeah, absolutely.
John, we're coming to the end, and it's that goal.
I was going to say one thing over there.
Go on, please.
I think a partner is as much of your team as your most permanent member of your team.
Yeah.
You just got to have that mindset, because that's what that's the way I look at all my partners. We've got fantastic partners, and you've got to empower them. No different do we empower your most permanent person or a contractor or whatever. I don't see those things. I see people working in my team, and that's fundamental.
It's a one team.
Yeah.
Okay. Coming to the end. Golden rules. Couple of them before we go, because it's red down there, so you can be succinct.
It's been red all the time, hasn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Actually, it has.
I think the big golden rule is engaging with the business. Be the business. We talk about operating excellence. Put yourself in the business shoes. Recognize that they want to understand. You're enabling them, not enabling yourself. You're enabling them. You're enabling them in terms of art of the possible. Overplay or continue driving that connection with them and engagement and education with them, and empower your teams to do that as well. And again, particularly your senior leadership, but everyone in your team, tell them they're actually part of the business, driving the technology agenda for the business. They're not the technologists sitting on the outside.
Memo, final word?
He stole one of my golden rules.
Sorry
but
about that,
if I add on to that, I think invest in talent and continuous learning is a golden rule of mine. And the other is focus on outcomes, not just processes. The two are really important, but knowing the business, working together as the one team, and driving things forward is where all great things come out of it from a technology perspective.